sustainably, as without them much of this work would have to be abandoned or scaled back due to the large staff costs that would be involved. But our volunteers are more than just the hours they provide. They're a direct link to the wider Auckland community and represent a very broad mix of backgrounds and ages. The oldest currently is 88 and the youngest has just finished school. The real heart of the museum is, of course, our collection. While unified by a maritime theme, our collections are incredibly broad and encompass everything from the archives of the Auckland Harbour Board to the Muaroa protest collections, ranging from dry as dust records to vibrant art. We conserve and make available to the people of Auckland vessels as diverse as Polynesian voyaging waka, 19th century coastal traders, the recent engineering brilliance of modern racing yachts, to Nautilus, a World War I motor launch that ferried wounded to the hospital ship Marama during the First World War. These collections are not only available in the museum galleries, but increasingly online and uniquely on water as well, with the New Zealand Maritime Museum offering the only regular heritage sailing experience in the city, which an Aucklander can access for less than the cost of a ticket to Waiheke. Since our report last year, large strides have been made in the organisation of our collection, most significantly the completion of the cataloguing of the Bill Laxton Maritime Photography Collection. This consists of 250,000 photographs, and it's taken 9 years of labour to catalogue and arrange, the majority of which was provided entirely free of charge by our volunteers. The breadth of our collection and the many way it intersects with the lives of the people of the city and further afield is perhaps best seen in our changing roster of special exhibitions. While our last solo exhibition, Messing Around in Boats, was honoured by a finalist placed in the Museum Aotearoa Best Exhibition category, I'm perhaps most excited by a new philosophy we've developed in the last 18 months around exhibitions. This is focused on collaboration, and between June 2015 and the end of this year, the museum will have produced 5 special exhibitions, all of them in partnership with different groups and organisations. 2015's Ferries on the Waitemata was produced with the involvement of Unitec design and photography students, and was not only an involvement for them, but an opportunity for us to commission new records for our collections. The 15-16 summer has seen one of our most successful exhibitions to date, At the Beach, 100 Years of Summer Fashion in New Zealand, and this was produced jointly with the New Zealand Fashion Museum. This exhibition has proved so popular, it's now likely to travel to several other museums around the country. We are shortly to complete Once Upon an Ocean, Stories and Tape Art, an innovative artistic display by a wonderful creative team, which will open on Auckland Festival's White Night. And this will be followed by a collaboration with the Roots Creative Entrepreneurs and Waitemata Roots Collective on a project that seeks to raise awareness and solutions around the issue of rubbish in our oceans, specifically the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, with Emma Tavolo co-curating an exhibition about the Fijian island of Dravuni. We're also in the forward stages of planning our next big summer exhibition, A History of Surfing in New Zealand, which promises to provide rich opportunities for community involvement, which is exactly what we're increasingly looking for in our exhibition programme. The museum also puts great emphasis on the way we interpret this wonderful collection, off-site, on-site and online. We continue our desire to work collaboratively through our public programme, and many of our programme audience engagement activities were produced in partnership. Some of these have been part of the landscape of the museum since inception, such as our involvement with the Auckland Anniversary Regatta, and some are new, an excellent recent example of which is working with AT and other partners to host part of the Tamaki Haenga Waka Festival, which is an exciting new initiative that we look forward to supporting for many years. The museum regularly presents a programme of children's and adult programming throughout the year. In the last 12 months, I particularly want to highlight 2 of these, if I may. Firstly, our Matariki installation and programme based on Te Wedo Island, with the kind permission of what was then Waterfront Auckland, which to our knowledge was the only programme by a heritage organisation on the CBD waterfront for this important annual festival. I'd also like to highlight the incredible success of our Day at the Beach event. This, which was linked to the At the Beach exhibition, transformed the Hobson Wharf car park into an enjoyable and comfortable seaside-style experience, where families and the CBD community can not only have fun, but learn from museum staff and our partners from Surf Life Saving New Zealand and Auckland libraries. This event alone attracted over 6,000 visitors over the course of the day. The museum also presents a more formal education program for schools, and as well as class visits to the museum, this has included opportunity for 10 schools to be hosted by the Volvo Ocean Race in the short time they were in Auckland, work with the Polynesian Voyaging Society, and in a first for us, one of our staff travelling with the Sir Peter Blake Trust to the sub-Antarctic and presenting an associated school program both while they were away remotely and on their return to Auckland. The museum, of course, is not without its challenges. Like all community, heritage and charitable organisations, we must steer the course between fiscal prudence, professionalism and remaining accessible and comfortable community spaces. The museum also has what I generally refer to as legacy issues, large matters that can affect the viability of the museum in the long term, while not necessarily affecting the museum's operation on a day-to-day basis. Some of these date back to arrangements in the foundation of the museum in the early 1990s and more recently, most particularly in terms of our lease, our liability and tenure on Hobson Wharf. And I believe later in this meeting, in a non-public section, council officers will lay a matter regarding this before you. Another example that is more within the museum's power to affect directly is the ongoing condition of Raupaki, our 1926 steam crane, on which a decision will be reached shortly. I mention these matters not to undercut the very real successes of the museum, but to underscore that the museum's executive and governance teams are fully aware of the issues facing our institution and are working proactively with our partners and stakeholders, especially city bodies such as RFA, Panuku Development Auckland, and the council itself, to mitigate and resolve these matters in a way that will provide maximum benefit to Auckland and its residents. Partnerships are very important to New Zealand Maritime Museum, and I would like to bring two in particular to your attention. Some time ago, our museum and the Auckland War Memorial Museum signed an MOU with the intention of working more closely together for mutual benefit. There are many efficiencies that may be gained by working together of two museums and the pooling of resources of heritage organisations. And it would be very disingenuous of me not to mention how pleased we are that the much larger organisation of Auckland Museum is happy and willing to work with us, and we thank them for their willingness to do so. We have begun to discuss multiple areas where collaboration will be beneficial, and the first tangible results of these discussions should be seen this year. We're also near finalising an MOU with the Te Toki Voyaging Trust, which among other things will give a permanent home to the Voyaging Waka, Haunui and Aotearoa 1 in the museum's basin. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity for us, as it allows us to provide education and engagement around the incredible story of the Great Pacific Migration and expose school groups, the Auckland public and visiting tourists to the kaupapa of long-distance whaka voyaging. It's genuinely a real pleasure to be able to report to you on what I consider an incredibly successful and vibrant period for the New Zealand Maritime Museum. This success is not only evident in the projects I've described, but in our numbers also. In the last financial year, we were able to report a 17% increase in on-site visitor numbers to just over 125,000, and in the 6 months since then, we were tracking at approximately another 20% increase on top of that. It's been an absolute bumper summer. Regardless, the 2015-16 year will see the largest number of visitors that the museum has ever hosted. We've scored equally well qualitatively as well, with the Museum Aotearoa National Visitor Survey showing 93% of our visitors as either satisfied or very satisfied with their visit. Our popularity with Visit to Auckland has also increased, with among other things our TripAdvisor ranking jumping from 19th to 15th out of 200 attractions, which is just one spot away from Waiheke Island. Financially, the museum is also in good condition currently, staying well within our budgets. We're extremely conscious of the need to remain sustainable financially, and we currently raise approximately 60% of our annual operating budget through our commercial activity, retail, gate revenue, and other fundraising ventures. On the whole, I believe the New Zealand Maritime Museum is an asset to Auckland and the people of New Zealand more generally, and we're proud of the improving results on which the museum is able to report and the greater level of public engagement that these represent. The importance of maritime heritage to Aotearoa New Zealand cannot be overstated. I would like to extend the gratitude of the staff and trust board of the New Zealand Maritime Museum, to the Amenities Funding Board, the Auckland Council, and particularly the residents of this city for their continuing support that allows us to tell these important New Zealand stories. Thank you.
Thank you, and very exciting to hear all the positive news coming from the fabulous museum down there on the waterfront. Just one quick question from me. With that number of volunteers, do you see any issues with the health and safety at work?
We are currently reviewing that. We have quite a high threshold that we set ourselves to meet, particularly because we also have operating vessels and we have a very robust training and sign-off process around those, particularly to make sure that our volunteers and visitors are all safe. Through that, we work through the MOS system, and Maritime New Zealand work very closely with us to make sure that our levels are all up to the appropriate standards. So, I mean, that's our highest risk area. Other areas as well, we are completely in the last sort of 12 months, and I must confess, even before I came on board as director last June, there was a real push amongst the staff to improve our health and safety methods, and we're working with a lot of bigger organisations who have very robust systems to try and learn from them. Auckland Museum's a good example, and so we're taking a lot of the leaves out of their book because they're a national leader in that area.
Right, thank you. Kathy, Councillor Casey.
Of the 125,000, how many are out of Auckland?
It varies from month.
We're still free for Aucklanders?
You're absolutely free for Aucklanders, yes. It does vary from month to month, so in the summer it's lower, so it's about 40% Aucklanders at the moment, and the rest of the year it flips, so it's about 60% Aucklanders. So on the whole, it's around about the 50% mark. The vast majority of our visitors are Auckland and internationals. We have a very small group of other New Zealanders, about 5%. So it's about 47% and for Aucklanders and vice versa, but it swaps depending on what season it is. So because we're in the middle of the summer at the moment, Aucklanders aren't in museums, they're on the beach, but we get a huge number of tourists, particularly with the growing cruise ship numbers as well. So it's about half, is the short version of that answer.
And can you just tell me a little bit about the demographic of your visitors?
Yes, well, we are most heavily represented in the CBD and surrounding areas. Being the area we're at, we work very hard to try and get people from further afield into the museum as well, particularly school children. Our largest group are Pākehā visitors. Second largest group are actually Chinese New Zealanders, probably the second most represented group who visit the museum. I'll be quite honest as well, for a variety of reasons, mainly financial, we haven't undertaken a large visitor survey done by a big professional firm in about 18 months, coming up 2 years. So those figures are 2 years ago. I would like to commission another one. They're quite expensive. So we do a lot of tracking from our gate stuff as well, but it's not scientific. So the vast majority are central Auckland. So some of the initiatives that we've done to try and get people from further afield, and one we've just signed off on with the Four Winds Trust, have been very generous and given us a large grant to bring low decile schools from their particular area of interest in South Auckland, so that the museum can pay for the buses and to get these school kids to us. So we've got a 10,000 grant from Four Winds Trust to bring more people from South Auckland to the museum, and we're trying to get a box a bit clever in the way that we work with partner organisations, other organisations in those areas, to get our collection out there as opposed to vice versa as well.
Last question is about your relationship with MOTAD. It seemed to me that you've got an MOU with Auckland Museum.
We do, yes.
Have you got anything formal with MOTAD?
Not anything formal, although we work with them a lot. We, MOTAT and the Air Force Museum in Wigram are the three sort of lead museums in New Zealand for dealing with large objects, planes, boats, that kind of thing. So the three of us are currently working together to put together the ethics and management section of the Museum's Aotearoa handbook on dealing with large objects. That's the major area of crossover between us. So we do work quite closely with them. We also meet, perhaps is the best, I'd describe it as informally, monthly, with MOTAT and other museum directors. All the museum directors in Auckland Central get together about every month to exchange ideas and so forth, but we don't have an MOU with MOTAT currently, no.
Thank you. Member Wilcox.
Thank you. Having sunk the tug a few times down there, there's a tug there that you drive around, and I'd always take visitors down there and show them. So I actually like going to the museum. It's quite neat, actually. I like the interactiveness of the Maritime Museum. But I want to know, how do you relate to mana whenua and to Māori in general, given that I rang and I contacted the museum 3 times regarding a waka that we had, which we wanted help with to either display or see if yous would display it, and I got no response.
Well, I'm sorry about that, and I will be quite honest, the museum's relationship with Tangata Whenua has not been as good as it should be in the past. We're working at improving that. We're talking with local iwi for the first time, really, now. We've started that process with our partners, and we have appointed Hare Williams as our Pai Arahi as well to advise us on some of these issues more generally. One of the first sort of things we've done to sort of work and tell that particular story a bit better is the relationship that I mentioned earlier with Te Toki Voyaging Trust, because something that the museum has not done well in the past, partially shaped by our collection and partially by the fact that we haven't generated the appropriate contacts, as we haven't told the initial migration story to New Zealand very well, and it's an area that we're particularly keen on improving. It is slightly shaped by our collection. We are very poor in that area, and so I'm disappointed to hear that the approach you've made has not been...
3 times.
Yeah, and may I ask, out of curiosity, when that was?
I think it began in 2014.
Yes, well, I'd like to say, as one would always imagine, that I don't think that would happen now. We've got a far more robust collection team as well.
Well, I gave up, you know, that's...
No, absolutely. I mean, part of the issue for us as well is we have a very large and expensive to maintain collection and a small staff doing it. So these are sort of, and we do have a sort of a national, if you like, responsibility as the custodians of New Zealand's maritime story. So these are the areas that we're particularly looking at trying to expand on. And the ARAFA grant this year that's currently under submission, they have been generous in a small increase for us of around 3.3%, specifically focusing on collection management, and that's exactly the kind of area that needs to improve for us to be able to handle those interactions better than we do currently.